what does today represent to you? And the camera's right here. What does today represent to you?
How you doing? This represents a turning point for the people of this country. We are determined to take our country back. We're going to fulfill the promises of Donald Trump. That's what we believed in. That's why we voted for Donald Trump, because he said he's going to take our country back, and that's what we got to do.
I wanted to play those words there by David Duke there to kind of put this whole conversation in proper perspective. If you notice, David talks about how he's going to help Trump take America back. I think, though, that unfortunately for him and people like him, they fail to realize what the strategy is. The strategy of white supremacy doesn't actually include those type of tactics as displayed in Charlottesville, Virginia. The real tactics that are actually being used are a lot more subtle than that. The tactics that are being used are the ones that are carried out daily by higher levels of government in attempts to not have people march around with white hoods on or white robes, but to put people in key position in black robes. You know, that's what, because see, if you understand white supremacy, you understand that white supremacy is based on the control of institutions. And those people running around with those white hoods on and Nazi symbols on, they are not the controllers of institutions. They are not the judges. They are not the politicians. It's the politicians who can redistrict lines, who can thereby nullifying whatever electoral power that black people might get, thereby keeping it in the hands of white supremacists, which they are. They're the ones that make sure that the judicial system functions in a way that's to the detriment of people of color, and therefore at the benefit of maintaining white supremacy. So when we get all focused off on the people in the pointy hats and the white robes, we don't understand how they quietly go about placing thousands and thousands of quote conservative judges in positions where to maintain the legality of white supremacy. Why is it important to maintain the legality of white supremacy? I know a lot of time you hear people talk about decisions that are made that seem, you know, you hear like the Dred Scott decision, and you hear and you say, yeah, okay. And you might hear about separate but equal, and you say, yeah, okay. But those things have consequences and effect on people, our lives, specifically black people. Let's just take, for example, separate but equal. That was a 7-1 decision, which was not really vacated in law per se for over 50 years. So that having that, and you talk about all the time how they talk about all the time about having a conservative court and putting conservative people in appeals courts. Let me give you how this type of thing can play itself out in a practical matter. Here's a situation that would happen a couple of years back in New York City. Judge rules NYPD stop and frisk unconstitutional, cites indirect racial profiling. So what does that mean? Well, here's a judge that said how people in the black community are being treated is unconstitutional, right? Okay, so imagine a judge like that is removed from the scenario, and one of the types of judges that are more sympathetic to white supremacy is put in those positions. So the same line might read, judge rules NYPD stop and frisk is constitutional and does not constitute racial profiling. And that's the type of thing that you hear all the time anyway nowadays. Well, you know, you have to, in order to prove that there was racism, you know, you have to do this, you have to do that. So, you know, to make it harder and harder to prove. And so this is what is the real nexus, the real crux of white supremacy. Those things that are done legally, those things that are done through the pen, not the wiki torch. Those things that are carried out by people in black robes and suits and ties, not white robes and Nazi uniforms. But that's the focus right now. That's where people's attention is at. That's where the focus is at right now. And I'm saying it's misdirected. It's misdirected. You have to have state power, and you have to have power over institutions to maintain white supremacy. I want you to look at this chart here to give you an example of what I'm talking about with white supremacy. Look at what white supremacy is. An ideology. It's a systematic body of concepts, especially about the human life or culture. That's what ideology is. It's a manner or the content of thinking, characteristics of an individual, group, or culture. So when you have white supremacy, people are influenced by it. They go into society. They carry out their life in society through their various institutions, which in turn feed into white supremacy, which repeats the process continuously. Now, I know the chart was somewhat simplistic, but it's to give you a visual representation of how white supremacy feeds into the people, how those people then feed into society, and how those societies influences those organizations or institutions, and which in turn flows back into society and institutions, and the cycle is repeated over and over again. Now, the thing about white supremacy is that at different times it may have to change forms, but it will never go back to the form that we saw in Charlottesville. That's just something that people can chase and put a face on it, and something that they can focus on. But no, white supremacy is well more insidious than that. So we need to think more concretely and more three-dimensionally, and not so statically in terms of white supremacy. Don't get played. Don't get took. Don't be bamboozled. Hopefully I was able to keep that simple. Hopefully I was able to make it plain. Peace.